the Great Depression, many nations began to abandon the gold standard. While some nations didn't, for instance, France formed the gold bloc, which included Belgium, Netherlands, Poland and Italy, but this lasted only a couple of years. Plus, because the American dollar was on the decline, Denmark, Sweden and Argentina all pegged their currencies to the Great British Pound, and Norway joined them in 1933, so the two countries were economically tied. However, Britain had very little interest in Scandinavia in the centuries gone by, despite the two nations both having a bit of a Viking revival and both being part of the North Sea Empire. There wasn't much talk of unions or anything like that. The only real interest I could find that England had in Scandinavia was a few proposals to buy Iceland. Now, the first of these go back to the 16th century when English fishing vessels were fishing in Icelandic waters. So the Danish offered to sell Iceland for 100,000 florins, and despite halving the price, Henry VIII still refused to buy it. There were further discussions in the 1780s when Denmark wanted Crab Island, a tiny Caribbean island, in exchange for Iceland. And then during the Napoleonic Wars, there were some proposals to use Scottish troops to invade Iceland. Plus, because the island was so underdeveloped, they were planning on turning it into a bit of a prison colony. However, nothing came of these plans. But back to Norway. Now, they were economically tied with Britain, and of course during World War II they were allies. And by the 1950s, it looked as though Marshall aid was running out, and they faced complete economic stagnation. However, just to put this into a bit of context, this was also around the same time that the French proposed to unite with Britain in a Franco-British Union, something I've done a video on before. However, no formal proposals were made to unite Norway and Britain. However, the two could well have united. The British ambassador in Norway, Halvard Lang, the Norwegian foreign minister, held talks in 1953 about forming a currency union. However, it seems that the Bank of England disapproved of this, so further talks were had about bringing Norway into the British Commonwealth. Now, this is possible because not every nation in the British Commonwealth was a former colony. For instance, Mozambique is in the British Commonwealth and was never a former colony. But it seems very unlikely that Norway would have entered. After all, both states are monarchies, and talking about a head of state probably wouldn't have got very far. Plus, in 1951, there were disputes between the two nations over fishing rights, and by the mid-50s it seemed that Britain's power was waning. However, there may be one important consequence of these discussions. This might be the reason why Norway joins NATO, to strengthen their ties with the British.